Hello, everyone. Well, we'll wait for hopefully a few people to jump in, and then we will start with the 2021 Women in Racing AGM. So I can see everyone sort of springing in now, which is great. Just give everyone a few minutes. Everyone is still pinging on through. Okay, a few more coming in. Let's give it another minute or so. Okay, and we're just, apologies, we've had the classic kind of technical difficulties. Not that we haven't all had enough practice over the last year or so with Zoom and Teams, but this is a kind of a webinar one. So we're just trying to make sure we've got everyone kind of coming in, and one of our great committee members, Jill, is stuck on the other side. So we're waiting for her to pop up as well. So we'll just give everyone a few minutes and we'll see if we can pull her in. Okay. So we'll make a start, and thank you very much everyone for attending. Just to let everyone know, we are recording the AGM today so that members who are either in different time zones or still at work or putting children to bed or doing horses or on the road, etc., can watch back later. So if you do know any members that haven't been able to log in, please do spread the word that it will be recorded, and we'll be able to share that out on our social media channels and Women in Racing website. So thank you all very much for attending today. You know, we're very sad to see it by Zoom, unfortunately. I think, you know, 2 years ago we had a great AGM at Ascot Racecourse, and we had our sponsored race, and we had a lovely kind of afternoon of racing with you all, which was fantastic. And you know, we're very sad not to do it again this year, and we understand everyone's probably Zoom and Teams and other conferencing out by now, but we're still grateful that you've all joined. So what we're going to do is provide an overview and an update of the work that Women in Racing has undertaken the last year, and then also the kind of stretch of the year before where we weren't able to, we were going to hold the AGM in person, but it had to be cancelled because of COVID. So that was a kind of a cancellation in extreme measures, and unfortunately we weren't able to run it, but we will take you all back as far as that, so we can make sure that we're covering everything that's happened. Please do jump in kind of at the end with questions. We're going to have a section where we will take questions from members. Please do feel free to kind of note things down as we go through, and you can ask individuals questions on their topics that they're covering. And then following the kind of formal part of the AGM, we're really excited to have Claire Balding joining us. So please also do pop questions through for that, so that we can save those and ask first. So we will kick on, and we'll skip straight into kind of the AGM. So this is the agenda. So we'll be taking you through these sections and updating everyone on those. And as you can see, all the committee are on screen. Hopefully you can see all our names so you know who we all are. And yeah, let's go on to the next one, Lauren. So looking ahead, we continue to look at these commitments to membership. These are a follow-on of what we committed to at the last AGM. We still are very much trying to hold 4 events a year, if not more. I think hopefully you guys have felt our kind of commitment to that over the last year, where we've had to move everything online. And so we've really tried to kind of adapt where we can. Mentoring and the bursary scheme are 2 of our really core commitments to our membership. We know that they are 2 of the sort of fundamental pillars of women in racing. And so we are continuing to do that, and Lucy and Lynn will update on those. The other 2 pillars are membership and also an awareness of women in racing. And we'll go into it shortly about the membership update. But I think we've got some interesting piece around that, where we kind of have seen an impact from COVID that we are very aware of and will try and establish. But, you know, our commitment to our members are very much these 5 pillars. And we hope we can kind of show that achievement over the next few slides. We'll go on to the next one. So just some initial committee updates for everyone. After her 3 terms and 6 years, Lynn Tompkins, who has been a fundamental part of our committee and kind of the leader of the bursary programme, will be stepping down. She'll be sorely missed. She's been a champion of bursaries. I'm sure lots of you who've applied for them have had the phone calls and the prep and the guidance through applications, and she's really helped us establish a phenomenal programme over the last 6 years. So she will be a sore loss to the committee, but we really do thank her for all that work that she's and the commitment to getting those bursaries done for everyone has been amazing. Ros Perkins also steps down. She's been on the committee for 2.5 years. She was our sort of helped us fundamentally establish our social media presence, setting up our Instagram account and really boosting our awareness and our reach across Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and has been vital kind of in championing us with her previous employer, which was World Horse Racing, and really helping us you know, with access to imagery and photos and her resources that she could utilise. So we really thank her for that work as well. We have 2 new appointments, and you will all be familiar with them because they've now been on the committee a while, but we formally have to introduce them because it's an AGM. But we've got Dom and Lucy, and Lucy, I'm sure a lot of you will know, heads up our mentoring programme, and Dom has been working on the Racing Home project and also helping us establish a connection to the wider membership through her work with the NARS, and so really helping us guide on how we can kind of make women in racing accessible for everyone across the industry. So we welcome both of them. So as it stands, this is the committee. We will ensure to kind of update everyone on any changes that happen to roles following the AGM. We do, as advertised through the MailChimp emails and also communication on the website, have space now on the committee to replace those that have stepped down. If you are interested in joining the Women in Racing Committee, the information is all in the emails that we've sent out. So please do send through your applications and we will then hold a vote via the website, and we'll notify everyone of that process and how we go about that. Next one, Lauren. So I'm not sure if Jill has managed to jump in. So she was going to help me out on the membership and social reach slides, but I think she's stuck in the ether. So we'll go on to the next one and I will update you here. So unfortunately, we have had a drop-off in membership over the last 12 months, and we were on a really good trajectory, really, of membership increasing year on year, as reported in our previous AGMs. But this year, in the last sort of year and a half, we have seen a significant drop-off. Most of them have lapsed with the reasons of a temporary lapse in membership, would still potentially be interested in coming back, but a lot of people still remain on furlough. The no kind of physical events was a couple of the reasons that was cited, and not being able to fully utilise women in racing in the way that they had. So we're very, very conscious of that drop off. It's been quite significant, but as we were kind of on a year-on-year trajectory of increasing our membership, we do genuinely believe that it has been because of the impact of COVID. We often get sign-ups, women in racing, when we hold events. Members often bring guests, and that's a way we spread the word and actually get sign-ups. So we've seen that without that this year, we haven't been able to boost that membership, but we will be reaching out to all the lapsed members personally via email to ask them to rejoin, to find a way that we can look at helping them out and kind of bring them back into the women racing fold as we're able to hold more events going forward. But please do spread the word amongst your colleagues and friends. We do heavily rely on a word of mouth basis for women in racing. It is open to everyone in the sport across all sectors, and we really do feel that we have a fantastic proposition for membership, and it can bring so many advantages. So we really encourage everyone to help us spread the word there. Next one, Lauren. So State of the Nation, we actually have a really good reach in terms of our social media. We have got a significant amount of followers. We also have, every time we kind of post, we've got a significant reach and impression. So we do know that we are being heard. An analysis of those followers are predominantly people in racing. So it's our next kind of challenge is converting that followership through into membership, and that's something we'll be working on. Over to Lynn.
Next slide, please. So as Tallulah said, this is one of our direct way of supporting women in the industry to progress their career. Our awards are up to 2,000 per individual. Our aim was 2 applications per year. We're delighted that we've received 5. One was in transit to be approved when I did these slides, and it was just approved yesterday, which is great. And I think it's really want to encourage members to think about, if you're focusing on your career, there's a great opportunity to apply. Yes, we haven't been able to fundraise, but we will be hopefully fundraising for the scheme. And the data and the research shows that women are likely to be far more disadvantaged career-wise due to the pandemic than our male counterparts. So, if there's some training or development you want to take, then fill in an application form. It's pretty straightforward on the website. There's a great committee. Jill and Jane have supported me, and they'll be carrying on. So yeah, apply. And if you're part of the mentoring scheme, talk to your mentor about what you might apply for. Previous awards, as you can see, are wide ranging, so everything fits, as well as we supporting people who are doing masters or perhaps doing a year in Kentucky. It's really important to think about, if you can demonstrate it's going to progress your career, then we're ready to look at it.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi everyone, it's great to be talking you through the mentoring programme. Sorry not to be seeing you in person. Here is a quick overview of the programme. So it's a pretty rare programme in racing. I think it's one of the real strengths of women in racing, as Tallulah said earlier. The mentors that we've got on the scheme are based nationwide. They've got experience across kind of the widest parts of the industry, and actually the mentors that we've taken on in the past year or so stretch that expertise even further. We've now got a trainer on there, an assistant trainer, a former jockey, and people from across education as well. So definitely worth revisiting that mentors page on the Women in Racing website and seeing who is on there. The objective of the programme is to provide kind of a range of support depending on what each individual mentee is looking for, whether that's contacts, whether that's support, as Lynn said, to apply for a bursary, whether that's drawing on their own personal expertise, or we also have some coaches on the programme who generously give their time. At the moment we have, it says 40 on here, but similarly to Lynn, we're up to 41 as of today. And yeah, the new mentors that we took on last year are Ashley Witchard, who was actually on Sky Sports Racing this morning, Catch Bissett, who was Godolphin Stud and Stable Staff Employee of the Year last year, Carrie Ford, who works at Racing School, Eleanor Bowden, who runs the Scottish Racing Academy, trainer Claire Kubler, and Alicia Pritchard, who has an amazing CV from across equestrian, racing and charity backgrounds. And then finally, just on this slide is a little reminder that asking for help, i.e. through the mentoring programme, is a sign of strength and not weakness. I've always been conscious that people speaking to me when they're reaching out about the mentoring programme feel like it's a weakness to be joining the programme, but actually it's exactly the opposite of that. Lauren, if you could, thank you. And here are just a couple of testimonials from people who have benefited from the programme. I'll just give you a second to read through those. Okay, Lauren, if you could move us on to the next slide. Okay, so the door is always open for new mentees to join. And if you have a look on the website, you'll find out more about the individual mentors we've got available, but equally get in touch with me, let me know what it is that you're thinking. We can talk through who might be a suitable person to help you and what it is that you're looking to get out of it. Everything is confidential on the programme, whether it's you're speaking to me or your mentor. And it's a free benefit as part of your membership, which I just think there's not many places that you would find that level of support. And if you're kind of slightly hesitant about getting involved, we have got a sound clip from a mentee that's on the programme.
I'm so glad I applied to be part of Women in Racing's mentoring programme earlier this year. When I first heard about it, read about it, I really wasn't sure if I fulfilled the criteria in any way, if it was aimed at people like me and where I'm at in my career and what I do. And so I got in touch with the team and they could not have been more helpful in talking me through all of that. They gave me loads more information, and then they paired me with the most brilliant mentor, who is someone that I hugely respect and look up to in this industry, and particularly in the line of work in the industry that I do. And it's early days of my time in the mentoring scheme at the moment, but my mentor and I had a great chat during some of the real dark lockdown winter months, and it was just really lovely to be able to ask someone like that at that level in their career loads of questions. Gave me a lot of confidence, and I'm really looking forward to working more with them. And I would really encourage, if there's anyone out there who's wondering whether the scheme is something for them or wants to find out a bit more about it, or maybe has never heard of it and is now just hearing about it for the first time, to get in touch with the Women in Racing mentoring programme team and see if it's something for you, because I know I'm really glad that I did.
Okay, and finally, this is an event we hosted on International Women's Day back in March. And again, it just gives you a little bit more information about what is mentoring, how does it kind of apply to day-to-day life. The screenshot there is from a short welcome from Anna Marie Phelps, and it was also hosted by Dina Arsel, who is a brilliant coach, as well as the founder of Simply Racing. So if you want to catch up on that and just want to sit and watch something that hopefully is quite helpful, that link there, or the little dinosaur, should take you to that if you hover over it with your phone camera. But yeah, keep in touch with us to find future events that will be popping up soon.
Brilliant. Yeah, so just on that note, we obviously have had a bit of a lull in the last 15 months on events. And so to counter that, Tallulah had the great idea of interviewing some prominent women in our profession, some prominent, some not so prominent. We've had a real range, but we have had some pretty heavy hitters on this Careering Ahead series. I've been fortunate enough to be chatting to a lot of them. We have had in this picture Julie Harrington, who is the new CEO of the BHA. She started in January. Salika Varma, who is the clerk of Aintree. Obviously lots there about Grand National. Vanessa Ryle, who herself has previously benefited from a Women in Racing bursary. She did a journalism course. And she was fantastic. She's obviously on Sky Sports. And Ashley Witchard, who is an absolutely brilliant coach and mentor. She has worked for Neil Mulholland. She's led up at the Grand National. She's been stable staff and so much more than that as well. She's doing a lot of work in the industry. And as Tallulah said, she was on Sky Sports Racing this morning. There's a whole heap of interviews, and they are all available on the Women in Racing website. Amy Murphy is on there. Last week we chatted to Amy Swales from York about her career in marketing and working at York Racecourse. So whatever area of the industry you are interested in, we've had an interview to cover almost everything now. We're still open to chatting to people and kind of highlighting the careers of the women who are members. So for any of you on the call, if you would like to chat, tell us a bit about your career and about yourself, do a bit of an interview. It's a great way to kind of build your confidence, have a bit of practice talking and kind of with the media side of things as well. It's very informal. I promise I'm not that scary. And it's a really lovely way to do it. So if you would like to be featured, then we are really open to chatting to more people. So do just drop us an email. We're going to be continuing this series, I think. They're quite easy. They're usually on a Wednesday or Thursday evening. We try and push the times around and hoping to hold a few a little bit later for people with kids as well. So yeah, do watch the website for that. Tallulah sends them out in a mail shot. So when they are coming up, we will certainly let you know. And yeah, it's been a great way to spend the winter just chatting to some really fabulous women from the racing industry. So go to the website if you haven't seen them, and you are more than welcome to catch up.
Thanks everybody. Hello. It is very strange, as everyone said, not to sort of be in front of you having a glass of something sparkly at Ascot or somewhere else, but Zoom it has to be. So I've only got one slide, I'm afraid, because I joined the committee and we had great hopes of getting a sort of partners program going, and then COVID kind of hit and put paid to that. So we do still have the Jockey Club, who've continued to support us this year, which has been amazing. Because obviously there haven't been any events for anyone to go to and everything's been online, but they've stuck with us, and we've kind of been in touch with them about, you know, we can't deliver certain rights for you, but how else can we help, etc. And also the All in Diversity group is still a big supporter of women in racing. So it's great to have those two people on board, those two groups on board. It would be lovely to have some others, and hopefully now we're coming out of COVID a little bit, fingers crossed. And we might be able to have some more events. And I think it'll be having the events and getting potential partners along to those events that might sort of showcase more what we do. It's much easier to sort of, you can talk to people quite a lot, but until they actually see what you can offer and what you can do for them, it's quite hard to get them on board. So if anyone has any ideas about who we may approach, it's not hugely expensive. Obviously, we're quite a niche group, but we're quite a key group of people in an important group in a great industry. So if anyone's got any ideas, please do get in touch with me or any of the rest of the committee. There's some ideas there, so we could link partners to an annual event if we wanted to do that, and we can include offers to members, logo placements, that sort of thing, content on newsletters, and any ideas that you might have that are not listed there that might benefit a brand that you might know. It's a great way of increasing awareness of a brand, and I think it could work really well. So this is definitely a work in progress, and I hope there's more to come.
So we really wanted to revisit one of the big projects that Women in Racing has been able to undertake despite the pandemic. And we're actually bloody proud that we managed to do it despite everyone being in lockdown and all the plans changing from it. So it was a massive kind of team effort from the committee, and then also very strongly supported by Oxford Brookes University, Simply Racing, the Racing Foundation and Kindred. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, because there were a lot of members at the event, we launched our Racing Home project back in November 2019, really because we'd had a lot of members reach out to us and a lot of anecdotal evidence coming our way talking about the challenges and issues faced by mothers and parents in the horse racing industry. And we really wanted to do something about it, and we really wanted to kind of establish a project and an ability to make significant change in the horse racing industry. As I'm sure you're all aware, we previously did a piece of research on women and diversity in the horse racing industry, and that published work was done by Oxford Brookes University and led to the formation of the Diversity in Racing Steering Group, which was one of the recommendations from the project. So we really thought that that kind of format and that structure of a project really would work, and we therefore decided to kind of undertake the Racing Home project in the same way. So launched in 2019 at a symposium, we invited the key stakeholders and the senior leadership in the horse racing industry to attend and listen to a panel of employers, employees, working mothers, to hear about the experiences of the industry and some of the issues that were out there. We really knew there was something that needed to be tackled, but we didn't want to preempt the question. And so the symposium really allowed us to expose some of those issues felt and guided us into the launch of the research phase of the project. The research phase of the project was held in 2020. It was meant to all be in person. We had sort of 6 workshops set up around the country, which we managed to do one at the beginning of March before we went into lockdown. And the idea of those workshops was to gather and speak to everyone participating in the sport about some of the issues they faced. And it was a data collection exercise so that we could really get tangible evidence of the issues faced. We're very keen at Women in Racing on data and having that research piece backing us up so that we have that academic work to support what we knew was already anecdotal evidences. So we moved everything online, and actually what was fantastic was the Simply Racing team who've helped us execute the project sort of found suddenly that the sort of 6 events that we were going to hold in person changed to sort of 12 online webinars because we were oversubscribed, and more people decided that they wanted to participate. And it was fantastic. The amount of information that we managed to gather from the sport was phenomenal, and it led to the publication of the report in November 2020. The report is on our website. Please do go and have a read of it. We're very proud of this piece of work. We know that some of it's quite hard reading, but some of it is also really representative of the issues faced out there by our membership, and then also by women and parents who aren't part of our membership. So we then took this report and published it to the industry, and we then went around to all the stakeholders who'd been at the symposium and all the senior leaders in the sport. And we took them through the report, and we asked for their backing and their commitment to support us in doing something about it. The report listed some tangible actions that we could take forward. And we really wanted to make sure that this was a buy-in from the whole industry, because it's all about the sustainability of our sport. You know, we knew from the evidence out there that, you know, there's over half of the employee base of horse racing are women. And if, you know, a proportion of that work base across the sport, you know, go along to have families and then struggle to continue their work-life balance, we were going to lose them from the sport. So the sustainability issue was really key for us, and it was something that was very much felt by the stakeholders of the industry, the BHA, the Horsemen's Group, the National Association of Racing Staff, the Racecourse Association. So it was fantastic to kind of get recognition and buy-in from those stakeholders that they wanted to be part of what we were trying to do. So if we flip to the next slide, Lauren. Phase 2 was undertaken at the first half of this year. Again, somehow Simply Racing amazingly managed to do it all virtually. I don't think they managed a single meeting in person even between the lockdowns because of diaries and stretched time. But phase 2 has now been completed as part of the project, and what it did and it took was it took those tangible actions that we had in the publication and it brought them to life. We were awarded a further grant by the Racing Foundation and the Alvarado Trust, who were really grateful for supporting it, which enabled us to fully scope and outline what an 18-month implementation plan would be. We're so conscious that sometimes in the sport, I've noticed it, or you know, people can be guilty of it, of saying that this is an issue but not following through with a solution. And Women in Racing are so keen that when we've identified something, is that we follow it through and try and work with as many stakeholders as we can to then affect that change. So this project has now been scoped, which is fantastic. We are now moving it to hopefully into phase 3. We're working very closely with Simply Racing again to basically see how we can work with all those stakeholders and contributors to implement a 12 hurdle plan, which we think will bring a significant change to the working lives of women and parents in the sport. We will be going back to the Racing Foundation for a further grant, and we're also going out to the wider industry and grant giving organisations to seek further funding so that we can implement the solution plan that we've put together. It's something we're really proud of. It's something that if any member really wants to get more involved, please do contact us. If you are in any sector in the sport and you think, oh, that's something that I would love to be part of, then we really welcome that, because we want to kind of start that 18-month plan, and we really want to do it with everybody in the sport. Next one, Lauren. These are the hurdles. I've already seen a typo that I've made, which is hurdle 11 and then 11 again, but you know, there's always going to be one in a presentation. I'll point it out before someone else does. And this is what the team at Simply Racing and the Women in Racing Committee have highlighted as what we want to deliver in phase 3, and we have a really detailed plan of delivery based upon what we found in the report, and then since going into it deeper with stakeholders across the sport of where we think we can really make change. So we're really excited to submit our application to the Racing Foundation and to some other grant giving organisations. We're hopeful that it will be very well supported and that the whole industry will get behind it, because we really do believe that it will make a difference to people's lives. And and we will definitely keep you all updated on how that project goes over the next year and 18 months. Next one, Lauren. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you. So yes, despite the obvious drop in membership income, which is as Tallulah said, we are confident is a consequence of the pandemic. We've had a gradual shifting over the last few years at Women in Racing into the majority of our income coming from partnerships with corporates rather than from the memberships per se, which is the original model that we had. Obviously, the membership fee at £25 or £15 is quite low for a year. So actually partnering with people like the Jockey Club has really allowed us to stretch what we're doing, particularly with regard to the racing home research. We're very fortunate that, as Jane said, we have been continually supported by the Jockey Club, and Kindred, who are an investment company, also have generously sponsored Women in Racing and the Racing Home project. They gave us £20,000 towards Racing Home, and the Racing Foundation have so far funded £27,000. We've also just been given another 20 grand from the Racing Foundation, as Tallulah said, to continue that work on into the future. So our excess of income over expenditure this year is pretty healthy, which is mainly because of the grants that have already landed in preparation for the work that is upcoming. We do have costs still outstanding. We owe 50% of the money for the research to Oxford Brookes, and obviously with the continuation of the research there will be further outgoings with regard to research costs and the project costs that will go along with that. But at the moment we have a fairly healthy bank balance, which is always great. Lauren will have the next slide if that's all right. So, and yeah, the bursary, as Lynn said, we've given away a couple of bursaries in the last year. Normally we are fundraising as part of the commitment to the bursary funds that we have. We've previously had the hat swap, which was gave some significant finances to the bursary, raffles, events, etc. But we have used some of the money from the Jockey Club sponsorship was specifically earmarked for the bursary. We felt that the money that the Jockey Club were giving us would be well spent on utilising that for the bursary for our members, because it's a major commitment that we have, and it's also a major perk of the membership that we really feel can give something to our members. I myself benefited from doing a fantastic leadership course last year that the BHA had put several people through previously, and was given a bursary for part of that. So definitely really respected and was grateful for the opportunities that came along with that. So we ring fence the money, some of the money within our accounts for the bursary, and the total funds that we've got there at the moment to support people in the future is about £5.5 grand. So if anybody is interested in the bursary, as Lynn said, we have got funds earmarked, and we have got cash for you guys to apply for. So don't be afraid to stick your hand up. We would be delighted to support you in your career with some financial assistance if you need. And as Lynn said, it can be on a really wide range of anything. So don't be shy. I think that was it, Lauren, is that right? Yes, perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Hi everybody, so I've got the nice bit and hopefully we can start looking to the future and getting back to normal. So some of the events that we have in the pipeline for you. The first one is we are working with a company, African Horse Safaris. We are hoping that they will come and talk to us very shortly and inspire us and let us know on the details of their holidays, and hopefully we can interest you in perhaps going on a safari. Again, we will be at Blenheim along with one of our partners, the Jockey Club, and we will also be, as Naomi said, careering ahead with our interview series, which has been extremely popular. And if there is anybody that you'd like to hear or like us to interview, then please let us know. Likewise, if there are any other events that you would like to see, then please feel free to email any of the committee, and we're here to help.
Thank you very much to the committee for that. That kind of concludes our update, and we would really welcome any questions from the floor. If you wanted to pop them in the chat, if there were any, I will hopefully be able to monitor it, and I'm sure Naomi, who's more of an expert on Zoom, will also monitor it for me. But please do feel free, now is the time to kind of ask us any questions on there, and we can answer them before we move on to the next part.
Tallulah, just while people are writing their questions, I forgot to say in the mentoring section a massive thank you to the mentors who volunteer their time to mentor all of the 41 people on the programme. So yeah, big thank you owed to all of those very generous people with their time.
Definitely. We may have got away with it, committee, because usually when we're in person we get flooded with questions, but everyone seems very shy.
I was going to ask you a question, Lucy, which is with regard to the mentoring. What form do most people's mentoring relationships take? Like, what could people expect if they were to be either a mentor or a mentee? If you were going to be a mentor, what's the sort of time commitment? And if you're a mentee, what kind of what might you expect to receive?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and the answer is probably that no two mentoring partnerships look the same. And Lynn's nodding, Lynn knows. So some people will just have one call, and whatever their issue was, whatever their problem, they might have generated some new ideas and have a plan from that and carry on and kind of get that into progress. Whereas some people will kind of informally keep in touch over a number of years. So, and I think with some it's WhatsApp, some it's Zoom. Well, a lot is Zoom at the moment. But yeah, it really depends on the individuals, and usually when you set them up for an introductory call, they then at that point say, these are the best ways to keep in touch, and this is a good regularity that would work for both of them.
Cool. Tallulah, we have just had a question come into the Q&A. Thank you, Penny. She says, I think you've all done a great job. What is the biggest immediate challenge? Tallulah, you can take that one.
I think for us, in the first instance, is really boosting our membership levels back up. I think, you know, I would say kind of 2 years ago, when we were at kind of our peak before pandemic, we were twice as large as we are now. So there has been a significant drop off, and it's something that we, you know, as a committee, you know, our purpose and our reach is the membership, and we really do want to be getting out to, you know, that over 50% of the workforce are women. You know, we have a low membership of £25 annually, or £15 if you work for a charity or our racing and stud staff. So it's something that we're trying to, you know, we keep that fee very low, and we try and encourage as many people as possible. You know, our membership is what keeps us going, and it's where we get our ideas from. It drives our objectives. So that's going to be a big focus for us, is to boost that back up again. I don't know if any of the other committee have any other challenges that they would like to share. Hopefully everyone agrees.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you, Tallulah, and I think not being able to have events has been the cause of that, as you've said, you know, because we do some great events like the Grand Women's Summit at Aintree. You know, I've still got my ticket rolled over, and that's where we get some new members. So yes, I think we've done great to survive in what is difficult circumstances.
Definitely. I think we would all love to see our events back. And I think, you know, it's something that we know it is really a kind of a fond part of women racing, is that networking ability. And we really do understand that it's very hard to do that on Zoom. And yeah, having that kind of in-person connections, I certainly know that, you know, a lot of the connections I use during my work are from sort of the people I've met at women in racing events. So it's definitely, it's something that I think we do know has been sorely missed. I'm just checking again to see if there's been anything further. I don't think there has. Oh, I'm right on time. Amazingly, literally as we were just summarising, here is Claire.
Hooray! Hello.
The timing is perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. We've literally just wrapped up our update. The people you are seeing on screen are the committee, and we have a vast array of members linked in and logged on, which is fantastic because we thought everyone would be zoomed out, but they're not. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Would you give me the ability to share my... Oh, I can share my screen.
Oh, lovely.
Brilliant. Because it just helps me if I can do this with pictures. So are you happy if I just chat away for a bit?
Yes, please do. Please do. And we'd love to do some questions at the end if that's okay with you.
So you might want to minimize so that you can see the screen. You can minimize obviously your sidebar so you don't have to look at me or anyone else, which is always helpful. Yeah, so I was just going to give you a little bit of background, and as you will, I'm sure, all be aware, I grew up in a racing yard. My father was a racehorse trainer. Both my grandfathers actually trained racehorses as well, not with any particular success, and I think certainly in my paternal grandfather's case, it was very much a sideshow to his real job of womanizing and playing polo. He was a very, very good polo player. This was Gerald Balding. And my mother's father was actually a very good trainer. And he was called Peter Hastings Bass, but he died quite suddenly and very young, just as my father had come to work for him. So that's how my parents met. And mum was 10 years younger than him, so it took a while. For them actually hopefully it took a while anyway, for them to get together and get married, but that's how he came to train at Kingsclear. And I was born in 1971, and as you know, those of you that are good racing historians will know, 1971 was quite a significant year in racing for a horse called Mill Reef, who was trained by my father. So anytime you ask Dad what happened in 1971, he will reel off all of the races that Mill Reef ran in. He was beaten in the 2000 Guineas by Brigadier Gerard, and you probably know that because it's the 50-year anniversary this year. He won the Derby, he won the Eclipse, he won the King George, he won the Arc de Triomphe. The following year, he won the Coronation Cup, and then he broke his leg on the gallops at home. And it was a huge story because even now, we know how difficult it is to save a horse if it's broken its leg. And in 1972, when this happened, it was even rarer. But Paul Mellon, who owned him, was absolutely determined, and money was certainly no object for him. And he was determined that if Mill Reef could be saved, that is what they should try and make happen. And they flew over a vet from America. And the picture that you see in the middle, so me and my brother are there on the left with our Shetland pony Valkyrie, and that's who I learnt to ride on and fall off 100 times to prove that I could be a proper jockey. And literally Andrew and I would fall off for fun every single day, and that has many benefits in life. And one is that you're not really afraid of falling, so you just do it and roll. But in 1971, obviously Mill Reef had achieved all of this. I had also been born in 1971, but Dad never remembers that. After Mill Reef broke his leg, the vet comes over from America. They decided to do the operation at home in what is now the colour room. So that's the room in which all this straw is banked up around the side. And Dad was most concerned about the anaesthetic, because horses being so big and half a tonne and all of that, getting the anaesthetic doses correct is really quite tricky. And he'd lost a horse of the Queen's actually the year before under anaesthetic. So they were very concerned about that, and they made sure that Mill Reef was surrounded by the voices that he knew. So John Hallam, who looked after him, my dad, Bill Palmer, who was the head lad, were all there. And he was amazing because they had the operation, they pinned the leg, they put him in plaster. And when he came round from the anaesthetic, he didn't do what most 4-year-old colts would do, which is panic and try and get up. He stayed down for long enough. And when he did get up, he did it calmly. And he was a really good patient, and he recovered well enough for the plaster to be taken off. And he was all set to go off to the national stud, because obviously he wouldn't be a racehorse anymore, but he was going to be was a very successful stallion. And my father, in his, crazy way, thought, oh, somebody ought to ride him before he leaves here. So threw me up on board. So that is me, aged a year and 5 months, maybe, a year and 5, 6 months, year and a half, let's say, with, I think quite a good position on a Derby winner, the most valuable horse in the world at the time, with no one holding the horse and nobody holding me, because that's what my parents were like. Anyway, she'll be fine. On the right was my pony Frank, who I just adored, and he was the real love of my life, and he's what got me loving competition and loving trying to crack that, the relationship with a horse and trying to make quite a difficult pony do something you want it to do. Dad, actually, the Queen was amazing because, she had horses with Dad and still has them with my brother. But bearing in mind, this is a man who said to her after the election of 1979, asked her view, which as you know, the royal family are never allowed to give a political view. So she said, oh, I don't know. What do you think about the election result? And Margaret Thatcher had just been elected first female prime minister in this country. And Dad said, well, it's a very odd one, ma'am. It's going to take a long time to get used to a woman running the country. He said that to the Queen. And you think, seriously, Dad, A, are you, what is wrong with you? And B, of the Queen, why wouldn't you take your horses away straight away? And she just laughed and thought it was charming. But obviously her real delight in racing is something that I think has massively influenced her life, but also it's been a hugely positive influence for racing. And the fact that the Queen does, obviously COVID changed everything, but does absolutely make a point of attending Royal Ascot and most years the Derby, and really gets pleasure from it. And the late Duke of Edinburgh was never much of a fan of racing, to be honest, didn't really like it, but always came for the royal procession and would stay to present. The Queen's Vase was usually the trophy he presented, which Estimate won the year before she won the Gold Cup. So he actually ended up presenting. That was a lovely moment on the podium. And just terribly sad that obviously 2 of the people in those photos are actually no longer with us. So the Duke of Edinburgh and Sir Michael Oswald, who for many years was both the Queen Mother's racing advisor and ran the stud at Sandringham and oversaw the breeding operation. The Queen Mother was that's her at lunch at our house, actually. So Major Dick Hearn, the far end, a great trainer, controversially removed as a royal trainer, but went on to train Nashwan after his accident that meant that he was a wheelchair user. But the Queen Mother adored him, and she had a couple of jumpers with Dad, including a horse called Insula, who had run on the flat for the Queen and then went jumping and ran in the Queen Mother's colours. And that wasn't long before her 100th birthday, because I remember asking her about it and her saying, oh, I can't wait for the whole thing to be over, which was very much actually the Duke of Edinburgh's attitude as well. And in many ways, he would be, there will have been some relief that he didn't have to go through the endless 100th birthday celebrations. But the Queen Mother, huge fan of jump racing in particular. I did a documentary, this may or may not play, but I did a documentary for the BBC about the Queen and her love of horses. And this was a scene sadly I don't think I can make that play, but that was a scene of her at Sandringham, inspecting the foals, and her knowledge is just superb and quite amusing as well. Now, my interest in racing as a teenager was really limited. I think partly because it was such an obsession. It was the only thing anyone talked about at home, and I just thought, I just need to be different. I need to not. I'm just not that interested. I didn't care. I didn't think it was a real test of horsemanship. I thought eventing was the thing that mattered, and I wanted to be an eventer. But when I hit 16 and could ride in point to points, my father suddenly said, oh, do you want to ride this horse in a point to point? And I thought, well, he might pay attention to anything I do if I rode in a point to point. So I said yes. And that went okay. And then he gave me the chance to ride in flat races. And this was a horse called Knock Knock, who I adored. And this is actually race still in motion. This is not pulling up after the winning post. This is race still in motion. He was 25 to 1 the first time I rode him at Kempton. He hadn't won a race since he joined our yard, but he was brilliant on the gallops at home. He could beat the best horses in the yard, and I rode work on him and I loved him. And we went, so Dad entered him for this amateur race at Kempton. And he said, look, you've got no chance of winning this, but just do what you do at home and see what happens, because we know he's got ability. And I remember walking the course, and Amanda Harwood, who was a brilliant amateur jockey, much better than me, said, you know, she was on favourite, and she said, have you got, you know, what are your chance? I said, oh God, no, absolutely no chance. And she always says to me afterwards, she could hear me coming through, because he liked to come through horses, coming through saying, good boy, Knock Knock, keep going. She said, I thought, what the hell is happening? Everybody else is riding a proper finish, and I'm just going, good boy, and patting him. And we won by 2 lengths, as you can see, hard held, smiling at the camera. He was fantastic, and I rode him in about 6 races, and I don't think we ever finished out the first 2. He was really good. That was the Queen Mother actually I'm sorry, not the Queen Mother. That was Princess Anne riding Insula in the Queen Mother's Cup at York. And for some reason, Dad had said, look, why don't we put her in the Queen's colours? Because technically, you know, I think this was after the Queen Mother had died. So the horse had been gifted back to Dad. But actually, she rode him in Dad's colours, because for some reason I think they didn't think he could win. And anyway, he did. He won by about 10 lengths. I had a rather tricky encounter with the Princess Royal in an amateur race at Beverley, in which I had inadvertently crossed across her fairly early in the race. I didn't think it was her, because I heard a lot of words that I hadn't heard before, and I didn't think necessarily were being said by her. But anyway, it was her. And that had created a bit of a... it was tricky, because I then won the race by a short head, and Princess Anne was second, and they didn't have a steward's inquiry, and you can imagine, it was all a bit terrifying. So we had we've always had we've done a lot of things, like, you know, we're involved in a lot of the same charities, obviously the Princess Anne to a much greater degree than me, and with much more influence, but you kind of end up crossing paths a lot, and obviously because of covering eventing at Badminton and Burghley and various Olympic Games, I've done a lot with Zara Tyndall, who's terrific. And when she won Sports Personality of the Year, I'd actually gone down to do the interview with her ahead of the programme. But it was somewhat surprising when I was awarded an OBE, and comical that the Princess Royal should be the one to present it to me. I had said in that awkward moment where oh yeah, there's Prince Harry as well, that's done a funny thing, but I was talking about I was going to talk about the Invictus Games briefly, but I just want to tell you the story that when you walk up to get your honour, and if whoever's giving it to you puts their hand out, shake your hand, conversation is over, back off, get out of there. And the hand came out really much quicker than I expected. So I just suddenly blurted out, I'm going to China tomorrow to film with pandas. Because I was. And I thought, you know, that's a winner in any conversation. And Princess Royal said, some people think pandas are very overrated. I was like, okay. Anyway, hidden behind that picture was me and Greg James doing the first Invictus Games, which Prince Harry had founded, but that's sort of rather by the by for what we're talking about this evening. I was really lucky in my you know, presenting career, early days in television, to get a chance to be a reporter on the BBC's racing coverage, which I did from 96 and 97, and Willie Carson had got a horrible kick in the paddock at Newbury, which effectively ended his riding career. And so we're starting to do some television work, and he and I got along extremely well, and we had an interesting and fun rapport on camera. That the director at the time, Malcolm Kemp, who was a wonderful guy, came up with so many innovations in television. I mean, really genuinely changed things, put cameras on helmets for the first time, not only put them forwards, put them backwards as well, put them in fences, really improved the sound, which is something I think actually has gone backwards now. There's too much recorded sound on racing, and it just doesn't it's not the same. You've got to feel like you're there. And you look at sports like cricket, and actually football's been interesting, and you know, with no crowd and what you can hear. And I think you've got to be able to hear it. You want to be able to hear what they're shouting. And sometimes you watch French TV and you hear it. You go, well, that's what it's meant to sound like. Or you watch a big meeting where there's been a bit of investment in it, and you suddenly hear, you know, it's to do with, anyway, Malcolm was a great believer in it, and therefore hugely influenced me. But also Malcolm was a massive supporter and wanted me doing a bit more. And Julian Wilson decided in 1997, end of 97, that he didn't want to do it anymore. So in 98, I got offered the job. Now, bearing in mind, I was 27 years old. I had been doing television for not very long. I'd done a lot of radio. Well, I say a lot. I'd been doing radio since 95, but that's still not very long. I think I'd hosted one television programme. I'd done badminton, horse trials. That was the only time I'd talked to Time, taken talkback on Open Talkback. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I genuinely didn't know what I was doing. And so I said yes when I was offered the job, because I was almost too stupid and naive and ridiculously brave to know that actually I shouldn't have said yes. But Willie and I had the most fantastic time, and over the years we probably both got a bit better at it. And that was the final day we worked together at Ascot in 2012, and it was the day Frankel won his 14th and final race. It was probably the last time we saw Henry Cecil in public, and it makes me feel terribly emotional, because it wasn't the last time I presented racing. I did another few years for Channel 4, but it was the last of that era, and that was my favourite time. I really loved that, and it was the last time racing was presented without adverts. And therefore we had, you know, particularly during Royal Ascot, you had a 4 or 4.5 hour programme in which you had no ad breaks, so you really had to make, you know, mid-afternoon entertainment television. And I remember once in the old days of faxes, we would read faxes from the audience to, you know, as they do now with the social stable, but we'd read faxes. And I said to Willie, oh, you read this one. And I said, who's it from, first of all? And he goes, it's from Anon. I said, no, that means it's anonymous. It hasn't got a name. He said, it has got a name. It says it here, it's from Anon. And he really meant it, and he really thought it. I just started laughing. And it was a very good question. I can't remember what it was, but, you know, really good, proper viewer questions, and kind of the first time that had been done. So it was, I never knew necessarily what Willie was going to say in answer, or indeed what the questions would be. So that was fun. Now, I hope this will.
This is Claire's reaction.
Okay, this is the
how much it
Oaks
means to
of
her.
2003.
She's excited, isn't she? And look at that.
And this is my brother's horse,
Cornelius behind the Cornelius license.
Casualook, winning the Oaks, and the interview that happens afterwards. So poor Willie got battered.
This is only his second runner in a classic. Casualook was his first in the 1,000 guineas, and he has won it. Well done.
Sorry, I meant to say something.
Because I can't speak.
Speechless. So, no, great. Martin gave her the most brilliant ride. Okay, so very exciting.
Well done. Dad, can you speak?
Well, wonderful. Not right, could he?
No, neither can I.
No, wonderful. No.
It's all a bit hopeless at the moment.
And that was the worst interview that's ever been done on television, certainly on racing. But it's interesting because, you know, even now, and I've seen it a lot of times, it still makes me cry. And I was trying to get Dad, before he disappeared, to go and saddle the horse in the next, because he'd only just retired. He'd only just handed over the licence to my brother, and he'd never won the Oaks, and it just meant so much. I thought it was such a big deal for Andrew, obviously, but it was also such a great tribute to my father, and I just was too emotional. But I still have a connection with Epsom. It's a place that means an awful lot to us as a family, and I'm on the board there, which is really my only racing job now. And my role has been to bring a bit of glitz and glamour, which I could razzle dazzle, to the Oaks and Derby. So a couple of years ago, Alice and I invited Helen Mirren and her husband Taylor to come to the Derby, and Taylor's a massive racing fan, and I knew this because we'd done a job together, and I'd ended up having a long chat with him, and he'd gone and walked the course at Churchill Downs on a non-race day because he wanted to walk the Kentucky Derby course. Now that's a guy who's keen on racing. So I said, oh, would you like to come to the Derby? You know, it is the original. And he went, the Epsom Derby? I said, no, you can't come if you call it that. I said, it's the Derby. And I would love you and Ellen to come if you can. And they couldn't come the first year, we asked them, and then they did come the second year. They stayed till well after the last race. They had the most brilliant time. I think they'd come again in a heartbeat. It was really, really fun. The one joy of not having to do Royal Ascot anymore for 5 days is I don't have to come up with 5 different outfits and 5 different hats, which is quite an expensive and difficult thing to do. But I really did love it. And obviously the challenge of doing the Royal Procession well, that's all the security guards for the Royal Party. That was after my last one. And they're just really nice. It's really fun. And so after, you know, you have to in life, I think it's really important to be able to slightly reinvent yourself, because things will happen, things change. And rights in television sport move around, and you kind of need to keep alert and keep being able to do other things. So I've written 3 books for children about racing, based on a racehorse, and actually my latest book, which is non-fiction, is kind of based on that concept of falling off 100 times and learning to get back on. But you know, that's what, you know, I have really key goals in life. I want to help empower women, and that comes through fighting for equal pay, but also improving the coverage of women's sport. I want to help kids because I think they really can suffer quite a lot from lack of confidence, and that is something that is really necessary in life, because you won't change anything unless you've got the confidence to speak up and try and make a change. You know, for a personal thing, keep having adventures, but most important, you've got to have a good sense of humour, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to laugh at things like this. Oh, come on, play. Please play. Oh, no, why does the other one play and this one doesn't? I don't know. Anyway, I can tell you what that is. It's a very, very funny sketch by Tracy Ullman. You can look it up if you like. It's just hysterical, and it had to have been contributed to by someone who knows me or has worked with me, because essentially the joke in it is that I try and do everybody else's jobs, which is absolutely true, and I would. And not in a controlling way, but just because I think I can help. And so I end up offering to do everything. And in that sketch, I offer to, I check it, I do all the cashier work, I try and save somebody who's choking. And that is very typical me. And it's just, I can't help it. It's like, oh, I can be helpful. Anyway, I'm really happy to take questions. And I see... oh, if no, I can see that saying if we turn our videos off, it'll give clever. Oh, thank you very much. That's very good for you. But yeah, no, Tallulah, if you want to ask anything or anyone else does, fine.
Oh, just thank you so much for taking us through that. I mean, it's fascinating, and it's great to kind of feel your passion through, you know, the work that you've done, and then also really nice to kind of hear at the end what you're, you know, making a change and reinventing, or not necessarily reinventing, but just exploring other areas of interest. You know, it's so interesting. I think it's something that I've always been fascinated by. And I think, you know, just a question from me, whilst everyone types theirs into the kind of Q&A box, how the kind of route to go and start being a sort of writer and a novelist. I know, you know, you're a journalist and you did newspaper articles and stuff like that, but the kind of switch to, I suppose, writing stories for children, was that a really hard mindset shift? Because it's quite it must be a very different process from normal writing.
Yeah, I had always wanted to write. You know, I read English at university. It was the trouble is you end up, and it goes back to the point I was making about confidence, you read so much good literature that you just think, I can't be Jane Austen, so why would I even bother? I'm never going to be William Shakespeare, so I can't write a play, which is a stupid attitude, because it doesn't matter if you can't be them. It doesn't matter if a teenage girl now thinks, I can't be Rachel Blackmore, still try and be a jockey. You know, you can still do do something. So eventually I had an agent who is still a great friend. And I was telling her stories about my childhood, and I was telling her stuff like that story about Dad saying that to the Queen, and the whole falling off. And then I was telling her I mean, you know, about him putting milk in the kettle because he thought that was a good way to warm up milk. It's not. And she kept saying, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book. And I was like, I can't. I kept saying I can't. I didn't think I had the discipline. And then eventually, really more than anything, to stop her saying that, I thought, okay, well, I can if I give myself a structure. So I wrote, in 2011, started writing my memoir. It's more a memoir than an autobiography, because that allows you little scope for, you know, exaggeration here and there. so I wrote My Animals Another Family, and as soon as I gave myself the structure of different animals for each chapter, so there's quite a lot of different racehorses in it that allow me to tell different stories. Mill Reef, for example, is one of the early chapters. Valkyrie, I think, is Candy's the first chapter. So it's dogs and horses. But I could think of it then like 18 short stories, and I thought to myself, I can write articles, so I can write a short story. So therefore, if I can write 18 short stories, bingo, I've written a book. And it came out, it was published the day after the Paralympics finished in London.
Good timing.
Oh my God. Now, I had nobody had any idea. No one had any idea of the impact that London and the coverage of London would have on the general public. But also I had no idea that I might even, I was just one of a very big team. I didn't realise that it would have quite a lot of personal impact. So the book went straight to #1 and was #1 for about 6 weeks and was still top 10 at Christmas and sold over 200,000 copies in hardback. I mean, that's phenomenal. And I thought, oh, well, this is easy. So I've always thought every book since I've gone, well, I haven't hit, of course you haven't hit 200,000 in hardback. That's like literally unheard of, unless you're Richard Osman and you do 1 million. But it was phenomenal. And I didn't think anyone would be interested. I didn't think anyone would connect. I was totally resigned to it being, something my mates and my family might enjoy. But actually it ended up having a much, much wider readership. And still today I get messages from people who are like, I'm reading a book on holiday and keep laughing. So that was a 2-book deal. And my second book was called Walking Home, which actually is probably better written, but didn't have the same, timing or sales trajectory. And then my publishers were quite keen for me to write fiction. And I wanted to write for children. And that's when I came up with the concept of The Racehorse Who Wouldn't Gallop, which was based on, my dad trained a very good sprinter called Loxon. Some people will remember her. She was phenomenal. Won the Abbey and won, she won a load of Group 1 races, but before that did the big sort of sprint treble in the handicaps and won the Stewards Cup and the Portland and this, what's the other one? Can't remember. Air Gold Cup, that's it. She got into a habit later in her life in training where she wouldn't go on the gallops. She absolutely refused to go on the gallops unless she was following my dad's old hack, who was called Quirk, who was a homebred hunter that I used to ride. And she fell in love with Quirk, so she'd follow him. So the idea was based on reality. And I created a, family of 3, which was kind of based on my niece and my 2 nephews. So little girl with 2 older brothers, and she's the one that wants to, she buys the racehorse by mistake. And the whole, the Derby Day scene is I wrote that in about 2 hours flat, just straight. I knew exactly how it went. I knew exactly what I wanted to happen. I could hear I could hear the hooves, and I knew what I wanted to say and do, and I knew the route she was going to take across the middle. I could see it all, and it's amazing when that happens, and I really enjoyed writing that. And then I wrote The Racehorse Who Disappeared, which was based on Shergar, really, and obviously with a slightly much happier ending. I went to school once, and I did a lot of school trips with the books, but I was showing the headlines that when Shergar went missing. I was 10 when that happened, and it was really, I remember it being incredibly impactful, or 11 actually when he went missing, but 10 when he won the Derby. And I remember the shock of it. And I was telling the story, and this little girl had put her hand up for questions at the end, and she still had her hand up when everyone else had finished. And she was literally tiny. She was only about 5 or 6. And she said, Claire Balding, I think I know what happened to Shergar. And I was like, oh God. I said, oh right, Ellie, she was called. And I said, oh, what happened to Shergar? She said, because I think I saw him in the New Forest, and I think he went on holiday. Oh my God, she could have said anything. I was like, oh. I said, you know what, Ellie, I really hope you're right. I really hope you're right. But it was so sweet. And then based on the work that I've done at the Paralympics and actually the experience of, my mum's really involved in ROR, the final book in the trilogy is called The Racehorse Who Learned to Dance. And that's essentially about what happens to a racehorse who really doesn't want to race anymore because he's had a bloody awful experience being kidnapped and then learns dressage. And, it's not as trite as she immediately gets selected for the Paralympics, because I happen to know that's extremely difficult to do. but the aim is there. It's Polly becomes the central character, who's Charlie's best friend, who got badly injured in book 2. So it all makes sense. Anyway, so that was the trilogy about racing, and then the non-fiction book that just happened to have the because I do a lot of zooms from this position. It's not like that's not the direction of my house. It's quite a good thing to have in the back of shot if I'm doing stuff about the book. That is, that idea of you've got to learn to get back on again. That's what life's all about.
But I think they translate to to adults as well. They're actually good reads in terms of reading them to kind of nieces and nephews like I've done and stuff, but actually great fun for adults to read as well, which is really nice. And I think your personality definitely comes through into the books, which I think is great. We've had a few really great questions. If you're all right, if I'll ask them. So a few that have popped into the chat from our memberships. So the first one is, how do you feel about being an LGBT plus role model in racing? Has your confidence around this part of your life shifted over time? So it's a bold first question, but I think it's so interesting at the moment.
Yeah. And actually, I'm just really relieved to see there's a lot of work being done in that area. I think it wasn't, you knew there wasn't going to be a party thrown for you and everyone's going, well, hey, she's gay. So it was it was pretty scary. But I remember actually, so my parents, all my friends knew for a long time, but my parents, I'd taken quite a while to tell them. And I went to the premiere of Seabiscuit, I think it was, with Alice. And I'm pointing that way because she's in that room over there. And the photographers took a rather an interest in us leaving the film, and the whole headlines the next day were, Steph out with her lesbian lover, and very sensational, as the Daily Mail will be. And I think that the benefit now is you don't have. It's not the trouble. The trouble with anything when you're trying to not be, you don't want to be othered and you don't want to be massively made a fuss of. It was very difficult to do that. You couldn't just be, accepted and nobody say anything kind of thing and move along and oh, Alice is nice, isn't she? Oh, thank you very much. Yes. So there was a lot more noise around it than one would be comfortable with about anything actually. And the Daily Mail were particularly extraordinary. Anyway, my grandmother was very cross, and that was tricky. But, generally speaking, people in racing, I actually think were fine. And particularly once they met Alice, generally, I think with anything that's you feel, and it's the same, anything where you feel you might not, people don't know what to say, you've got to help them break the ice. And that's what takes a bit of energy. And same I think with mental health issues. Actually, I was listening to a brilliant podcast which I'm sure many of you will be aware of, that Elizabeth Day does, called How to Fail, and I was listening to Dr. Alex on that last night when I was driving back from somewhere. And I think that if we do anything in this era, and if we learn anything from COVID, it's to be able to have conversations like this and not necessarily have to be in person to do it. It's much easier when you're in person. It's much easier, I find, when I'm walking with anyone, and it's much easier to talk because you're sort of looking out there. But short answer to the question is, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't awful either. And what I try and do now is make sure we celebrate the joy that you can do a lot of this, with anything if you're in a perceived minority, and if you're in a group that has had to face quite a historic prejudice. But actually, I'm a big believer in the pride attitude of let's have a carnival. And I've said this to racing groups of, don't forget that yes, it absolutely offers support, offer people a way of talking if they've got problems, but also you can celebrate being LGBT.
Positivity. It's not always
what's
talk
carnival
about
all about? What's pride all about? It's about that. It's pride, not shame. And that's where I think the most sort of valuable thing. For example, in the back cover of the children's books, there's a little biog on me, and at the bottom it just says Claire lives in London with her partner Alice, and at the time Archie was alive, our dog, and a cat called Button. Right now there are 2 cats now and no dog, but just that line, Claire Little with her wife, I think it said with her wife Alice, just that line does it. That's all that's needed. No kids ask any, you know, that's just complete, that's a statement of fact, and everyone goes, that's fine, you know, crack on. It's not
I think racing is you know, I think over the last year and a half, you know, we've seen the work that the BHA are doing and the Diversity in Racing Steering Group are doing, which is, you know, fantastic, because I think, as you said, you know, in racing, I think we, you know, it is an industry where we can be very aware of things, and we can, you know, move into kind of a better scenario, and like you said, do that celebration, which I think is fantastic. We've had a few more questions pop in. We've had one from, I think it's Dina Arsler at the Simply Racing group. So she said, thanks for a fascinating insight. Racing still needs you. Do you ever feel like you need it? Could you see yourself back in the sport, and what capacity? That's a great question. Come back.
It's really, I don't know. I mean, I've really enjoyed the being on the board at Epsom, although I think I thought I was more capable than I am of changing things. Not changing things because I think actually it's very well run, but helping Epsom become more popular, helping it have a, you know, a higher status, even in its local community, getting a Derby crowd again, as it used to be. You know, I have visions of double-decker buses the whole way down to Tatman Corner and round. I really, you know, I do think it's a great day out, but it's harder to make other people realise that than I thought. Outside of racing, I mean. So that's been fun. You know, it's a weird thing because I think there's still a bit of that teenager in me that's wanted to prove that I could actually present on television. It didn't have to be racing. It didn't have to be the environment that I grew up in. It didn't have to be in a world where I kind of knew everyone on first name terms. I needed to be able to prove to myself that I could actually rock up in rugby league and present it where nobody knew me. And that's been really, and then I've really enjoyed that. So doing other things I've found out of my comfort zone has been really important to me. And there definitely was a time when I couldn't make it all fit. I couldn't, you know, I was being pulled in too many different directions, and I felt that I wasn't necessarily being listened to in the racing team that I was in. And that was really, I got very anxious about it, and it made me very stressed, and I don't want to feel like that again. So racing's hard, you know, it's really hard. And there is a reason why people do racing full time and don't do any other sport. There's more information to take on board. There are more runners in every race. You know, everyone goes, oh, how did you do the swimming at the Olympics? Swimming's easy. There's only 8 runners in every race, and they've all got a lane, you know, and frankly, you're only going to talk about the medalists when you do the race replay. You know, you don't have to know 40 different jockeys who are then going to be riding, you know, 40 different new horses in the next race or whatever, and they're going to have different owners, and it's really tough to keep on top of it. And I wanted to tell stories. You know, I did a series once called The Valley of the Racehorse. It went out on the BBC. It was really lovely. It was all these stories in Lambourne about, you know, the farrier, and we had the pub guy who was a coach driver. That was his hobby. A trainer who literally you'd never have heard of, who had about 3 horses in training, and it was her life and following, you know, the one chance of a winner that she might have. And I can't. We must have done an apprentice jockey, and I'm trying to think who it was, but I can't remember now. Anyway, you're following the live story, and that's what I find interesting. I like the people who were involved in the life of racing. I am not that interested, I'm afraid, in the betting. I hate the fact that every story in the Racing Post is, you know, a horse might get injured. It's not about the injury to the horse. It's about how the market's affected for the race it was meant to run in. I hate that. And I just am not interested in editorialising racing based on betting. And that is a problem for me. It didn't used to be a problem. It certainly wasn't a problem on the BBC, because actually betting came very low down the order, and they weren't dependent on income from bookmakers for, you know, to sell adverts. So it was, you know, I have a very purist point of view that isn't really compatible with the modern world of broadcasting.
Really interesting. No, it's really interesting as well. I think you know, and it's great because it does show that, you know, you changing career paths or directions within a career path can be very beneficial as well. And I think that's something that, you know, I think often we forget we don't have to stick to one area and one lane throughout our whole careers. So I think it really does show that. On that, we've got another question on which woman has most influenced you?
Probably a combination of Ellen DeGeneres, which isn't so popular anymore, but anyway, and because that was my first real, you can be like that and be on television and be successful, and you can wear trousers, actually. You don't always have to wear a short skirt, which I'm really bad at doing. And Billie Jean King, for her drive and her determination to change things. But honestly, I went and interviewed her the year before last for a program called Sporting Icons, and she would be, what, she's 75 now, I think. I came away from that just feeling like I'm not doing enough in my life. I mean, what am I thinking? You know, you've got to really drive these things through. If you want to change stuff, you've got to keep driving. You've got to be like Billie Jean. So I think she's been pretty phenomenal. And I think in broadcasting, Eleanor Oldroyd has been a massive help and support and friend over the years, and was one of very few women. You know, there was about 3 of us in BBC Radio Sport when I started, and Ellie was one of them, and she was so supportive, and she's such a good example of, you know, in the early days, it's difficult, I think, in television in particular, because they'd never put 2 women together on programmes. They do now, and in sport, actually, I think BBC Sport's very much led the way. You know, I've presented I remember going to the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, and the 5 main presenters were all women, to the point where Charlie Sale of the Daily Mail said, "Oh, do you have to be a woman and blonde to present on BBC Sport now?" And it's like, seriously.
Classic Daily Mail.
Yeah. And anyway, so I think that there was an environment early on where you kind of thought, well, there can't be 2 of us. So, you know, there were some people who were literally, I have to kill you to get your job. And I would hope, and you know, Ellie certainly promoted the idea you can be much more supportive and collegiate than that. And actually, you know, I'm doing the highlights for the Olympics this year with Alex Scott. I've done lots of stuff with Gabby Logan over the years. Obviously, Wimbledon, I worked with Sue Barker, and we've all, Jill Douglas is a great mate of mine. Lee McKenzie is a really good friend of mine, and I would always pass, you know, if you get offered jobs that you can't do, I would always make sure that one of them gets it. But also, we do lots of stuff together, and that's really fun, and that's changed. That didn't happen, you know, 15 years ago.
And I suppose, like, one final question, and thank you so much for your time. It's the cliche question, but I do like it, because I do actually think people always, you know, roll their eyes at it, but it's a great one, because actually we all want to know. What is a kind of, you know, your parting sort of wisdom and advice and stuff in careers? You know, what is that kind of nugget that you hold on to every time you think about making a career decision or choosing something? What is the thing you kind of go back to in your head that you would pass on to everyone?
Well, there are a couple of things. When I was struggling and really getting, you know, I really struggled with the end of, you know, with deciding not to do racing anymore, which was a conscious decision. Before then, obviously, Channel 4 lost the rights to ITV, and that wasn't anymore a decision, and actually was almost a relief. But I was reading a book at the time by Ros Savage, and it's really worth reading. It's called Stop Drifting, Start Rowing, and it's about her decision to give up a really successful career in the city and row the Atlantic. Yeah, it was the Atlantic rather than the Pacific. I think it was the Atlantic. Now, we're not all going to do that in our lives, and she did it to raise awareness of environmental issues, but also because she needed to just reset, and she wrote an obituary for herself. One, the obituary that she wanted it to be, and then a second one of what it would be if life ended tomorrow. And she was so disappointed with what she saw, that's when she decided to change her life. And she wrote in that book a line about, essentially, I'll paraphrase it, if you don't step out of your comfort zone will start to choke you like cling film. And that image, I just thought, that's what I'm doing. It's not so much step out of your comfort zone because it will stretch you. It's if you stay in it, it will completely choke you. And that's what I was feeling. I was so conflicted because I kind of knew, and I look back on it now with a bit of perspective, I think I realised that it was coming to a stage where if you had a station that had so many days racing, you really had to just do that. And I didn't want to just do that. I wanted it to be how it had been, and like I could do all these different things, and I could still tell stories about racing. And anyway, so I was really struggling with that. And what was my identity if I wasn't the woman who did the horses, which is generally what people say to me and still say to me. But what could I be if I wasn't that? And I think that it wasn't easy, and I still have anxiety dreams actually about being on telly and not knowing the form of a horse that's just won a race, or something like just, oh my God, I don't know, I'm a fraud. But I think we all have that, and it's been so exciting and interesting. So there's that about acknowledging when your comfort zone might start to actually prevent you from doing things, rather than being a nice, safe, cozy place to be. And the other is I am determined to have adventures and to keep being excited and challenged by things that are just different and make me think differently and give me a different and alternative perspective. I just don't want to be one of the crowd. I never wanted to be, thank God, because I never was going to be. But I think there's and that's what I try and say to kids, there is a real strength in that. You don't have to look like and sound like and think like and act like everyone else. You really don't. So that would be the sort of combination advice.
I think that's fantastic.
It's much easier. If you do fit into the crowd and you want a quiet day, it's a hell of a lot easier.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day. I know you've been working today, and we really, really appreciate having you on. I think it feels like a total coup. I know all of us are fangirling completely all over.
You're very welcome. We'll do, when we're back on, when we're allowed decent, and I will be at Epsom for both days, but do come, for God's sake, come up and say that you're, part of Women in Racing, and just come for a chat, because it's not, I sometimes feel a bit lost at the races unless I, can meet new people and talk to new people and find, that's what I like doing. And it was always easy with a microphone in my hand. I could go up and ask anyone anything. It's not as easy now. So
I'm sure we will all take you up on that offer. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone who's joined the AGM virtually this year. Next year, we'll hopefully be on a bloody race course, watching some racing and doing it there, or somewhere just as fabulous. But we really appreciate your time, Claire, and thank you everyone else.
No worries.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.